this morning. The rest of this speech, you press that red button and you can follow it on Sky News Active. Right now we're getting active with what's happening sports-wise. Joe Cole at Liverpool. Here's
Joe
Jackie.
Cole was very active yesterday. He was up the mountains having signed...
Twitter's up the left this morning. We're not really...
Yeah, it's not playing ball this morning.
It's not playing ball. Is your Twitter down? Our Twitter's doing all sorts of crazy things today, but folk are saying what this morning? What have you gleaned?
Well, I've got an email on cats and music. There was a paper review saying that your cat should listen to meditation music to calm them down. Rosalind said, yes, I agree. My cat's very nervous about travelling, so if I play the radio or sing to her, she relaxes. So sing to your cat.
Sing to your cat.
Isabel,
you have a cat?
Play weather songs to your cat. It's raining men, you know. Fluff loves it.
Really, Fluff.
Yeah.
That's an original name, isn't it? That must have taken you ages.
a long time. It's a boy as well.
Yeah, it's a boy. Fluff's a boy. Now, weather-wise, well, the country's sort of split in half, is it not?
It's split into a sandwich, Eamon. Yes, we've got all sorts going on. We've got rain in the middle, and it's a pretty hot weather across the southeast.
Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, big security conference happening in Kabul this morning. It started just over 90 minutes ago. Charlotte with the latest on that.
Thanks, Eamon. Yes, in the last few minutes, the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has urged Afghanistan and its international partners to redouble efforts to build the country to succeed in the war against the Taliban. Torrential rain in China is testing the country's massive Three Gorges Dam. At least 146 people have died since the heavy rain started earlier this month. 40 people are still missing. The water level in the Three Gorges Dam is now just 15 metres short of capacity.
Thanks, Charlotte. We're going to look through the newspapers we've got for you on this Tuesday morning now, beginning with security. Let's go to Charlotte now. She's got more on this.
Well, security in Kabul has been tightened as ministers from around the world discuss plans for the future of the country. The Afghan President Hamid Karzai will present his government's vision of how it will shoulder more responsibility for security and economic growth. Now, he wants more control of the international aid budget to further this aim. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is attending. That's along with the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and also 70 other representatives and foreign ministers. The Foreign Secretary William Hague is representing the UK. Now, Britain has just announced it's increasing the amount of aid it's giving to Afghanistan to 700 million, and that's an increase of 200 million. And the main items on the agenda are aid, governments and also law, and that includes tackling corruption, economic development and peace and security. And it's hoped a timetable can be drawn up, allowing Afghans to take over responsibility of security by 2014. That's when Britain hopes to withdraw frontline combat troops. Well, today's conference comes in one of the bloodiest periods for international forces since the toppling of the Taliban in 2001, with 13 British deaths this month alone. Well, President Karzai opened this conference by giving special thanks to those who'd lost their lives in the war.
On behalf of the people of Afghanistan.
Sky News Sunrise on a Tuesday morning. Good morning to you, Clemency Burton-Hill. She's got the newspapers coming your way in just under 10 minutes, but we've got some breaking news coming in from Afghanistan, from the Kabul. Got Clemency Burton-Hill with the stories in the newspapers, including the big society. And what is it after this from Charlotte?
Thanks, Eamon. Cuts to police budgets could harm the ability of forces in England and Wales to combat crime, according to the Chief Inspector of Constabulary. Sir Dennis O'Connor also says at the moment only 1 in 10 police... And if you've ever ended up scratching your head over tax affairs, now efforts are being made to make the tax system easier to navigate with the creation of an Office of Tax Simplification. The Chancellor George Osborne has given the new unit the task of making the 11,000-page tax code both shorter and also simpler.
Now, you see, the Office of Tax Simplification, is that part of the new big society vision that David Cameron has? Because the guys that are running that, they're not being paid. That's voluntary. That is voluntary. It's voluntary work.
It's tax deductible, though. Tax break, I
probably.
hope.
They're going to take an 11,000-page booklet and half it.
Condense it.
And they're not being paid for it.
Sort of what David Cameron is promising to do with government.
It is. This is Clemency Burton-Hill. Her views on the stories in the newspapers. What do you think of the big society? Do you understand it?
I don't really know what it is. I mean, certainly it's the most positive spin on cutting government down to size that we've heard since the coalition came to power. David Cameron did give his sharpest definition of it yet. Now, this has been his big theme long before he came to power, before he was even elected leader of the Tory party. So this is what he said yesterday. It's about a huge culture change where people feel both free and powerful enough to help themselves and their own communities. It's about people setting up great new schools, businesses helping people get trained for work, charities working to rehabilitate offenders, etc. Now, whatever it is, he's prepared to stake his political reputation on it. But lots of people this morning saying, is this just a cover for the fact that he's making massive, massive budget cuts?
But is it not about a mindset? Is it not about people now, everybody thinks, the state will do it for me. People don't take responsibility for anything. Goodness sake, I can remember in the 60s, people used to clean their own streets. Now no one would even think of doing that.
Yeah. So this is about giving power back to the hands of the people in a major, but it's going to be more than a cultural shift, and as you say, it's a huge mindset shift. But how will it actually work in practice? That's the question. I mean, there's a lot of funny comments this morning saying things like, well, are people going to not turn to officials because they've got this new big society mindset, or because the officials have been sacked? And that's a big question, because, of course, things like volunteering, expanding the voluntary sector, that doesn't come for free. It costs money to train volunteers, to develop them, to organise them and support them. So there's been no word from Cameron about how all this is paid for. So it'll be interesting. I respect the idea in theory,
but we're not paying for it.
If it works. We've got no money to pay for it, Eamon.
Afghanistan and this security conference this morning, and you've gone to The Guardian, and they're talking about a nation in free fall here.
Yeah, incredibly depressing from everyone who's reporting it in terms of the situation on the ground in Afghanistan.
They're saying it's an unwinnable war here, and there's got to be a negotiated withdrawal.
So one of the big things that The Guardian are picking up on is the fact that unthinkable, or what would have previously been unthinkable, compromises are going to have to be made in terms of talking to the Taliban, in terms of...
They did it in Northern Ireland.
They did it, and look at the result there. So, but it's been an absolutely no-go area up until now, but clearly the situation is just so incredibly bleak. I was particularly struck by a story in The Guardian about how British military deaths are increasing at a rate that's not proportional to the rest of... certainly to deaths of American soldiers, but also they're speeding up faster than any sort of major conflict landmark, and especially in the last few months alone. So,
could we move on to the story
times.
of Tony Nicholson? And he featured in many of the news programmes yesterday. Very, very sad situation. This man has suffered a stroke, and he's looking, if he wants to have a mercy killing, he wants the law clarified on the situation.
Well, this is the most ambitious attempt yet to loosen the laws on right to die, which is so far centred on assisted suicide. It could reach the Supreme Court. He's asking for his wife not to be charged with murder if she gives him a lethal injection. He's suffered this massive stroke. He can't kill himself except through starvation, which would obviously be an incredibly traumatic process. He can't go to Switzerland, where euthanasia is legal. And he wants to ensure that his wife is not going to spend the rest of her life in jail.
And so immobilised is he couldn't do anything to himself anyway.
He can't
couldn't
do
take
anything.
pills.
And he says, I've lost my dignity, I've lost my life, I'm like a baby, but I'm never going to grow out of it. And he's actually saying that he wishes that the doctors who'd saved him in Athens hadn't saved him, which kind of feels resentful and churlish for the poor doctors who saved his life, but I think is a very compelling case for...
Let's just finish on insulation in your house, wrap it up or be fined.
Yeah, basically, just when hips have been got rid of, another piece of bureaucracy has come in for people buying homes. This is a penalty rate of stamp duty. If you're looking to buy a home that falls into the F or G efficiency bracket, then you're going to have to pay a penalty tax, which would be 0.5% above the stamp duty, which obviously is a very unpopular tax in any case. So I guess this raises lots of questions about, should the onus fall on the people selling the house? How will it actually work in practice? Are people going to try and factor that into the price that they pay when they're negotiating the offer? It just it feels like it's kind of clunky, bureaucratic way of doing something. It does matter, though.
Who would then take over?
Efficient.
I mean, there are a lot of old buildings, old houses and whatever that need restoration.
Yeah.
So that would put people off restoring, wouldn't it?
Well, so the idea is that if you buy it and you take this tax burden, if you then do the renovations within a few weeks, I think you don't get a very big window in which to do the renovations. renovations. Then you get a rebate and you actually get an additional 0.5% after that. But we all know what tax
I know
rebates are
someone
like.
who bought a house which basically looks like the Monsters house. You know what I mean? It is full of cobwebs and broken windows and all sorts of things. And they would have gone broke, wouldn't they, Charlotte? If they had to have
I
had
think it's
this
unrealistic
tax.
expecting people to do it within a few weeks' time. And also, I'd like the government to lead by example on this, because there's an awful lot of giant government buildings, actually, that when they do these
Probably
energy
like the
maps,
House of Commons.
are just pumping out, all this heat.
Do you remember last year when the report on number 10, how much energy is wasted in number 10 came out? It was staggering. I mean, I'm
but
sure
there's a
it's
lot
the same
of hot
across
air
the whole
comes
government.
out of that place, I would imagine. Clemency, lovely seeing you
Lovely to
again.
see
Thank
you.
you very much indeed. That's Clemency Burton's Hills romp through the newspapers on this Tuesday morning. We go to Afghanistan.